I am Dr. Leah Leach, and we are talking about today the internal battleground, okay? So there's this sequence in the Wonder Woman movie, 2017, the movie with Gal Gadot, that inspired this entire class, all right? I was selfishly really wanted to explore this idea further. I wanted to take what was in my head and really kind of force myself of like, okay, what are the different things? What are the different takeaways? How are different ways that you can interpret this sequence to take it with you in situations? You know, how can this be a tool in your toolbox, an example? So I wanted to figure it out for myself. But I wanted to mostly give it to other people. I wanted to be able to help other people with it. So there's going to be a lot of metaphors in this class. I'm also going to jump from metaphor to metaphor. So a bit of warning. That drives my husband nuts when I go metaphor within a metaphor. He calls it metaphor inception. So I'm calling it out now because I've been called on it before. And I try to be like, okay, switching to a new metaphor. Like I try, but sometimes I just like, and then there's this, yeah, sometimes I don't. So the goal of why we are doing this is to give you options to look at complex issues. So many things are not just black and white. In an eye-rolling bestseller title, they are 50 Shades of Grey. I'm very sorry. I just like, But one way to think of it, because I might as well start the metaphors like, you know, right off the gate. So, you know, you don't worry when they're coming. If the only tool you have in your toolbox is a hammer, not every problem is a nail. All right. So if you only have a hammer, you think of every problem as a nail. I want to give you more tools in your toolbox so that you can have the most productive one when the time arises. Okay, so in the movie, there is a physical battleground that is called No Man's Land. We're going to use this as our metaphor jumping off point and also kind of our touch point. We're going to come back to it. You know what I mean? We're going to kind of like use that one and then go to a different metaphor and then come back to it. Sorry. But we're going to use it as our jumping off point for identifying parts of our own internal battleground. So when I say internal battleground, what I'm saying is what's going on in our head, okay? To a certain extent, what's going on in our heart, but what's going on in our head. Some of this is motivated by the outside world, to-do lists, family, work, etc. But some of it is us dealing or not dealing with our own self-esteem, self-doubt, self-sabotage, etc. Okay, so the internal battleground that we're going to be talking about quite simply is put with your conscious and subconscious thoughts about yourself and the world around you. Okay, what's going on in your head, right? Some of that is absolutely terrifying. I totally understand that. So I'm going to set the groundwork for the image of what we are given in the movie. So what are we actually given? So in the movie, Wonder Woman and the team arrive at No Man's Land. So there is the trenches of both sides, the opposing forces of the Germans and the Allies. Sometimes there is no gunfire going on in the trenches. Sometimes it's a rainstorm of bullets, and these trenches are dug out and your enemy is just across a barren field. There is a sense of dread and fear that each moment might be your last. You are fighting for your entire country, but you are also fighting for your life. So when describing No Man's Land, Steve, he says that no man can cross it, okay? He says they have tried for a year and they have made up little ground. And then he especially says, this is not something you cross, it's impossible. So Diana has that great like turn to camera thing where suddenly she's got her tiara on and she's got her outfit on and she's ready to be all Wonder Woman. And she says, no, but it's what I'm going to do. I wanted her to turn and be like, but I'm no man. And I think that was just too obvious because it was No Man's Land. And I think that's what we were expecting. So I was fine with that. But then she climbs the stairs to the barren battlefield and she exposes herself to the opposing forces. The bullets start slow. She deflects them with ease. She's almost kind of surprised and like, oh, that's pretty easy. That's very nice. She makes up more ground, and then the gunfire increases. The bullets are so many that she is stopped in her tracks. So she holds her shield, and the bullets are, holding her back and almost pushing her back to a certain extent. She is working harder on defending her position than moving forward. So then the boys start to notice she's taking fire, and that she is basically the enemy is completely focused on her, so they can do a counterattack. They start to fire back, and they start to rally the troops. They climb over the trenches as well, and they lessen the attack on Diana Wonder Woman. They divide and conquer. They cross that impossible line, and they reach their destination, and their enemy flees. All right? So that is the foundation of what we're going to be talking about. I do have some specific images, but at the same time, it's such a memorable scene. So let's talk about crossing and impossible, because Steve's first line that we're going to talk about is, it's not something you cross, it's impossible. Okay, so we're going to talk about crossing and impossible. In your own internal battleground, it isn't something you cross. It's not something that you actually get to the other side of, okay? Inside yourself, sometimes there is times of peace, times of war, times of truce, okay? But there's always going to be another battle within yourself. There's always going to be another piece to create. But unlike what Steve is trying to kind of say, it's still worth fighting for, okay? All right? So just because you can't win this internal battle, in finger quotes, it doesn't mean you don't try to make headway. Wonder Woman made headway. That's, the visual metaphor we can take from it. Just because there's going to be another battle in your body, mind, or in your id or your ego, it doesn't mean it's not worth fighting. Think of it this way. One night you have a restless sleep, okay? Does that mean that's it? You're never gonna go to sleep again? Like, what's the point? Like, I couldn't sleep last night, so I'm just never gonna try again? No, you try anyway. You might make it through the night, you might not, but you get those little minutes of sleep, and little minutes of sleep is better than nothing at all. So working on your internal battles, making a little bit of headway is better than no headway at all. So those small moments of peace or clarity or making sense of a small bit of trauma is totally worth it. It's totally worth it. And so now let's go with the word impossible, okay? So Steve has the line, it's not something you cross, it's impossible. I don't know if you guys have heard this. It's one of my mantras. It's actually by the guru Will Smith. Sorry, he's taking this from a Confucius quote, but I still love, Will Smith. Those who think they can and those who think they can't are both usually right. Okay, so this is something that is not possible or impossible. So if you think something's impossible, then it's impossible. If you think something's possible, possible. So yeah, so thinking something is impossible, that you can't do it, it builds a trench and you're sitting in it for days or for weeks or for years, basically. So those who think they can and can't are both usually right. So I always want to say, try something. But then I'm a Star Wars girl. I actually even have my, so I'm a Star Wars girl. And so then I think Yoda, do or do not, there is no try. So I'm sorry, I'm always like conflicted in my geekness. So try something or be like Yoda, do something. Do or do not, there is no try. Also, by the way, Yoda is something totally Confucius would say, just like Will Smith is quoting Confucius. So try something, do something. It's only impossible if you think it is, all right? So the next part of this, taking bullets so that others can make up ground. All right. When I first saw the Wonder Woman movie in the theater, first of all, just floods of emotion, so much to process. But Wonder Woman, she's holding her shield, and those bullets are just raining down on her. Sparks are flying off of her shield, and she's holding her ground before whoosh, she pushes them all back. I did think of internet comments. That is immediately where I was at the time and where my brain went. So I'm not sure how many of you know this, but I have gotten a lot of internet hate over the years. It comes from my film work, is where it comes from. Because film critics are mean, and they're not even critics, they're really just trollers. But, and a lot of it's YouTube's. Some of it is film sets, and some of it is just the horrible film industry that I retired from, that I left. But some of it is also because I picked a fight. I picked a fight with a Ghostbusters remake hater, who refusing to see the movie, and he had 2 daughters, and I said, well, what about your daughters? They might really enjoy something that you enjoy. And wow, that really made people mad. I got on a list. I could tell it was a list of trollers because they were all kind of saying the same thing, and it was all about the physical appearance. Lovely. So I got a lot of non-constructive criticism and hate-filled comments. Also because I pointed out how many few female directors there are. People don't like being told that. I also campaigned for the Bechdel test. I love the Bechdel test. That is one of the Gals Guide podcast episodes the last couple of weeks. When you bring up gender in a boys club environment, you remind them that you are a different gender. And they can't really seem to compete with that. So let's just say you better bring a shield like Wonder Woman has when you kind of remind a boys club that you're a different gender. Yeah, so I took a lot of brunt of criticism, and the reason why I did is because number one, I was willing to take a stand. Like I did this mindfully. I knew what I was doing. I also got a lot of hate because I said provable facts with confidence. There's nothing worse than saying something you can prove is true and being confident about it. People really hate that because then they got to destroy your looks. And then number 3, the things that I said were public, and they were allowed to have discussion and comments, and you know what I mean? Like, I didn't say it in a vacuum. I said it, out loud. So when I saw Wonder Woman climbing that ladder and deciding to take a stand, I felt like that was me agreeing to a presentation or a podcast that I knew would have heavy ammunition in the form of internet comments. Like, that's kind of how I was interpreting it the first time I saw it. I would present my case, I would hold my ground, I would, if I needed to, put up my shield and defend myself and just kind of take it until they were ready to absorb it, really. But here's another reason why this movie scene is so powerful, because before Wonder Woman pushes off those bullets, her friends come to her aid and divide and conquer. And I didn't realize how important that was really until I saw it in the film. Mostly because you have a hero and characters do that hero stuff by themselves, right? Well, a lot of this trauma crap that we are all dealing with, you don't do it by yourself, and you shouldn't do it by yourself. You need a team. You need either your Wizard of Oz team, which I gloriously compare the Wonder Woman to the Wizard of Oz team, or you need your Star Trek bridge, or you need your merry band of Star Wars rebels. You know what I mean? Whichever one, whichever fandom you want to commit to, your Justice League, whatever you need your team. That team is friendships, it is partnerships, it is your squad that takes heat off of you just enough to remind you to not only that you can win, but what you are fighting for. So I was talking about my girl Katie before this with baked goods and telling me, you're awesome, screw them. That's my girl Katie, she's in my squad, right? Exactly. So, I mean, I took crap so that other women in film wouldn't have to take as much. It was only when other men and women started saying, hey, you know what? This 5% of directors thing, that's not cool. We should really do something about it. That people actually started to listen, and not only that, but take the heat off of me a little bit, to kind of lighten the load and the punishment as the direct target. But I've got one more reason why that bullet deflection scene is so moving for me, of taking the bullets for other people. And it's way more meaningful than internet comments, because honestly, I mean, as much as they suck in the moment, they are really not a big deal at the end of the day. What is that I have a family member who can't respect boundaries. And if you've experienced this, I feel you. I really do. If you haven't, sweet. I hope you never do. A family member of mine doesn't respect his influence when it comes to internal dialogue. Basically, if you take our Wonder Woman metaphor, okay, and you're down in the trenches and you're just kind of like talking about no man's land. Like, imagine Steve starting to describe what no man's land is, and then bam, a grenade comes in before you even have a plan or an idea to start with. This guy really liked to throw shame-filled grenades when people were least expecting it and before they would even try anything. So for me personally, it slowed me down thinking that I could accomplish anything. Like, why even try? It wasn't until I saw him doing it to my daughters, not me, I didn't realize it, but once I saw him doing it to my daughters, I went all Wonder Woman in no man's land. I actually called it at the time, I called it Mama Bear is what I called it. But when I saw the Wonder, I'm like, oh, that's what I'm doing. I was not going to keep my daughters stuck in a trench, waiting for fire on them, to have a fear of even trying to get out of a trench. I needed to clear the battlefield. I was strong enough to do it. At that time, I was strong enough to do it, to clear the battlefield. So I laid down a boundary. I drew an imaginary line, and he fought back hard. Oh, so hard. I stood there like Wonder Woman with that shield, taking that anger, taking that blame, taking those shame-filled words so that my daughters could sneak out of the trench and make up some ground. I took those bullets so that they wouldn't have to take as many. And so if you have that internal strength, draw fire so that other people can make up ground. It is not for everybody. Not everybody has the strength to do it at a time and sometimes, but if you do, I've come out of the other side of it, and for myself, it was worth it, and for my kids, it was worth it. But it's not for everybody, but I give you that tool. So let's switch to internal battlegrounds when the opponent is someone else, okay? So in some ways, it is easier when you have a battle that has a physical enemy, all right? Somebody specific. It actually is a little bit easier. This is why movies have a physical embodiment of a villain, because it's easier for us to understand. I will give you a little kind of like movie fun though. If you've ever seen the movie Twister, the villain, of course, is the tornado, right? Okay, the tornado and its destruction. Well, Carrie Elways' character is also the villain, and he is the physical embodiment of the Twister as well. If you watch that movie, they actually shadow each other of how one is a physical embodiment of the tornado and one is the tornado. The reason why they had to do that is because the producers and the executives said nobody will understand that the enemy is the Twister. Carrie Elways, yay. So if you have one person who creates the most internal battles inside you, here is a metaphor that actually sheds some light on that has helped me. So here, like I said, it's another metaphor wrapped in a metaphor, and I know we're in a Wonder Woman metaphor, so it's all kinds of fun. Okay, so let's say you are walking in the woods, okay, and you are minding your own business, going through the woods, nice, full, peaceful, listening to the birds, seeing the trees, and you come across an angry grizzly bear, okay? Your heart will start to race, your adrenaline's gonna skyrocket, your lungs are gonna fill up with air, your eyes are gonna dilate. You are in fight or flight mode, deciding what to do, okay? And this happens subconsciously. All of this stuff starts to happen. And that's when you see a bear in the woods. What happens when that bear lives in your house? So if you have grown up around an abusive person, you have lived in a heightened state of fight or flight. And you're always waiting for the next battle, for the next attack, all right? That heightened state is exhausting, absolutely exhausting. It drives us to unhealthy coping mechanisms. It also drives us to taking it out on others if we are not mindful, because we are in such a state of panic. When your internal battleground is someone else, you need a place to breathe where you don't feel like you are attacked. You need a safe space. This is where this term comes from. You need a safe space. When I was a kid, it was listening to music in headphones. This is probably why I love giant ass headphones, because it says, I am listening. But lately for me, it's journaling and meditation. That is my safe space. That is my place to breathe. You also need boundaries when it's somebody else. Think of it as defining where the battleground is and what weapons are acceptable in the battle for you. So the clearer you can be on this, the better. It really does help. So now what I think is the really, really hard one, when the opponent in your internal battleground is yourself. This one's really, really hard. Sometimes we are our own worst enemy. As easy as it is to picture somebody else, we can be really horrible to one another. If we could actually like separate out our internal dialogue, we might be able to actually see how unhealthy it is, or just how much of it there is. There's just a lot of it. Now, I am in a constant work in progress in this area of self-deprecation. And I mean, I know it's been an issue for me. I had a traumatic childhood, and so my internal voice has been rebuilt and torn down and put back together with glue and glitter and then destroyed all over again. I mean, it's always a work in progress. And I have accepted that, and I'm totally cool with that because I learn something new every time. So I know from years of therapy that I can be my own worst enemy. I also know I would never let anybody else talk to me the way that I talk to myself sometimes. And I think we all kind of do that sometimes. So if your internal battleground is you versus you, the goal isn't who wins when it's a war against yourself. The goal has to be peace. There is no winning when it's you against you, right? So on one side, you will have your ego telling you how awesome you are and how you've never made a bad decision. And then on the other side, you have your subconscious remembering every single mistake you've ever made, right? So sometimes you have to find that middle. Sometimes your decisions are bad, and sometimes a mistake is the greatest lesson you will ever have learned. So I personally, in full disclosure, am a Buddhist, and so I'm a big follower of the middle way. It also helps me visually, because I'm a very visual learner, hence why we're talking about Wonder Woman in a metaphor. But when it comes to the battle against, the internal battle against myself, I picture myself on a path, okay? I picture like a dirt path going forward in front of me. My goal is to keep moving forward, okay? Towards the goal that I want, towards the dreams that I have, towards the person that I want to be is always kind of out in the distance in this path. On either side of the path is extreme polar opposites, okay? So one of it is, suffering and terribleness and depression on one side. The other side is blinding bliss, just absolute happiness. I actually aim for the middle. okay? Away from the extremes, but moving forward. And sometimes you drift. Sometimes life or the wind or, my own sense pushes me one way or the other. But I'm mindful to come back to the center, to the middle of the two. So to get back to the Wonder Woman metaphor, see, there we go, coming in. When you are battling with yourself, you are standing in the middle of no man's land, and you are encouraging both sides not to fire. So that's the visual that you can use from Wonder Woman when you are battling against yourself, right? Okay, the uniform. The glorious uniform. So let's talk about something stupid for a minute. Because I almost didn't bring it up. There was many a time where I'm just like, I'm really going to talk about her clothes right now. It is a factor, and it is something that is totally worth talking about. Our uniforms, okay? I lightly talked about it yesterday during the Wonder Woman movie breakdown about the Amazon uniform that Wonder Woman has, how Etta Candy has her secretary uniform, how Steve has his spy uniform, right? Which usually means he's wearing a lot of German uniforms, ironically. As much as I hate bringing up what women wear, because I feel like a lot of times women are treated like walking hangers, like when it comes to like the beginning of the Oscars and stuff like that, or the Golden Globes or whatever award show, people are like, oh, look at what she's wearing. It's like, she's not a walking hanger. Like I don't participate in those. But what we wear, what we choose to wear, does prepare us for our battles. So if you are wearing, let's say, sweatpants and a tank top, I don't want to judge, but let's say you're going to a gala, you might not feel like the most confident gal in the place just because of what you're wearing. Maybe you do. And if you do, sweet. I want your confidence. I absolutely love it. But our wardrobe, our makeup, our jewelry, including a sword placed on our backside, gives us our uniform. It gives us our confidence. You use it when you need it, okay? If you don't feel like makeup, don't. Seriously, just don't. Trust me, barely anybody even notices. Like the only thing really you're gonna get is, oh, you look a little bit tired. And most of the time it's like, yeah, because I am tired, because I didn't even feel like doing makeup. So of course I'm tired. But I mean, that's just me. Wear the clothes that work for you for the battle of that particular day. If you're fighting with your legs, I say pants. If you are fighting with your, let's say, principles, like Etta Candy says, I'd recommend a low top number. But then again, that's just me, because, fighting with your principles. So, okay, I'll get a little bit more serious now. It's really very silly talking about like what you wear into battle, but I know sometimes that if I just change what I'm wearing, I will kind of change my mindset. And it's just for me. It's not for anybody else. It's just for me. Okay, let's get into herd mentality. All right. So switching metaphors, back wrapping around again to Wonder Woman. I worked in retail for a few years. Okay, and one of the places that I worked at was a video store. For the most part, I loved it. Okay, I hated people, but for the most part, I loved working with movies. I was the one that could describe a movie. If you told me what the cover looked like, or you know what I mean? Like you describe the cover and I can tell you what movie it is. It was a certain set of skills that barely paid the bills. Let me put it that way. But most of the year working in the video store, working in retail was customer to customer relations. Okay. I saw each person that came in. I had interactions with each person. Many times I knew their names, like they were regulars. It was a one-to-one relationship, okay? Then came Christmas time, Black Friday, okay? So Black Friday through January, otherwise known as just hell season. The vibe changes, and it's no longer one-to-one, okay? Even my regulars don't even come in, like, during that particular season. It's not one-to-one, it's a line, okay? And it's about getting the line done as fast as possible. People become a herd. People become faceless. Interactions are only memorable if they're on polar opposites. If they're really, really horrible and mean, or if they're very, very nice and bring me cookies. It's a blur and it's draining. It's absolutely draining. And so why am I telling you this? So I'm telling you this because sometimes people can see you as an individual, as who you are. They can see you. Sometimes you're part of a crowd and you're faceless and they don't really see you. So unless you break through to that one-to-one interaction, most people don't remember, which means they aren't judging you. They aren't remembering what you say. They aren't remembering what you're wearing. And they really aren't thinking about you necessarily later. I know that each of us spend a lot of time worrying what other people think of us. And really, you have to look at, was this situation a one-to-one or was this a herd mentality situation? Because if it was a herd mentality situation, trust me, people do not think about you as much as they are thinking about you. Let's plug this into the Wonder Woman scene in No Man's Land. So if you are Wonder Woman and you are climbing out of that trench, okay, you are concentrating on the number of people that are shooting at you. You're not seeing individuals. You're not seeing choices. You're not seeing their stories and their background. You are seeing a battalion firing at you. They become faceless, but that doesn't make them any less dangerous, but they become faceless. Now, if you flip the script and you are picturing yourself in the German trenches firing on Wonder Woman, first of all, how could you? Sorry. But if you are firing on Wonder Woman, you are making your own choices, but she doesn't see you and your needs. She's defending herself. You are assuming she will attack because that's what all the other people do. So you are defending yourself, your life. You are part of a herd. You are firing because everybody else is firing, and you are defending yourself. You're also on the negative side of history, but I'm sorry, it's a metaphor. So what I'm saying is sometimes you are in the faceless herd. Sometimes you are the Wonder Woman trying to make up ground, and sometimes you're the shooter. It's about being able to identify your role in the internal battleground and then deal with what the consequences are of that. I gotta ducktail that into social media a little bit, okay? So it's a tiny sidebar, it's a little tiny sidebar, because it ties into herd mentality a little bit, okay? Being seen and not being seen when it comes to social media, especially Facebook, oh my gosh, Facebook more than anything. Understand if you don't, it's an algorithm, okay? You don't see every single one of your friends that you want to see. You don't even see their posts. Not every one of your friends who love and treasure you as a real human being, they don't even see every single one of your posts either because it's an algorithm. I've had people be mad at me, like really, really mad at me because I didn't like their posts enough. And I'm like, honey, I didn't see it. Really didn't see it. Otherwise, you know, I would have been right there with a thumbs up and a love on you. It's going to be very weird to say, but social media is not a reflection of real life. And as long as we embrace that, I think we'll be a lot better. Not everybody sees your activities. Not everybody clicks those reaction buttons, even if they do see it. And some people only post the good things about their life. Some people only post the bad things about their life, okay? So you're barely ever seeing a full dimension part of the people that you actually care about and love. So if you need a one-to-one, if you need that one-to-one, call them, text them, email them, get the one-to-one, have a real form of engagement, because it is very much herd mentality in social media with the illusion that it's not, that it's personal. So yeah, I will also try to help you out here. If in our Wonder Woman metaphor, social media would be the water pistol at No Man's Land, okay? It's not gonna help you. Maybe a few drops of water to drink, but it's just gonna keep leaving you thirsty for more, okay? So basically, social media is like a water pistol at a battle. Okay, so when the battle stops, okay, this is a very important part of the equation. You go through these different battles throughout our life with ourselves and with others and with the herd. What about when the battle is over? And is it really ever over? But let's say it's when there's a truce. Sometimes you are shell-shocked, all right? In the true sense of the word. Sometimes you worry that somebody else is going to fire at you. You worry sometimes that you're going to fire at somebody else in self-defense, you know what I mean? And like that, I'm healing right now kind of scenario. So be mindful in this moment of healing. Don't start a new battle until you heal from the last one. You know how they say with relationships, like don't get into a new relationship until you've kind of processed the last one. Otherwise, you're bringing all that crap with you to the new relationship. So take the time to heal your wounds. More importantly, learn to trust people again. Because after you get into a battle, trust is an issue, right? Because it is a sense of betrayal. Even when it is within ourselves, it is a sense of betrayal. Tell trusted people that need to know in that one-to-one that you've just been through a battle. Tell them it's family trouble or a death or a divorce or a health scare or, you know, a fight. Tell them I'm defensive because I'm dealing with da-da-da-da-da, and I don't want to put any of that on you. And if I do, I'm sorry. A lot of times I will just lay groundwork and be like, I'm just a grumpy puss today. Because sometimes that's what it is. Sometimes it's just a grumpy day where it's like, if anything that I say in the back and forth, it's like, it's a grumpy day. And if you can imagine this is a grumpy day, it's weird. That's why I have to warn people. Because when I'm grumpy, it's like, what the hell has happened with the world? But we're not all perfect. None of us are perfect, actually. Odds are everyone that you talk to is in the middle of some kind of internal battle. Okay, it's very similar to what Samir said in the movie, to Wonder Woman in the Village. Everybody is dealing with a battle, Diana. So be honest with the people that you are having a one-on-one experience, because that gives them the chance to realize that they too are also working on things. And we realize how more interconnected we are, that we're all dealing with stuff. So some people are dealing with very small battles, and some are in the middle of an all-out war. You never really know unless somebody else is brave enough to actually tell you. And it does take a lot of bravery to tell you. So my last bit is making an attempt at satisfaction, okay? And I know there is part of me that has the Rolling Stones song stuck in my head, but this actually comes from my movie making knowledge, okay? So when I was in school and learning screenwriting, the rule of writing an ending is not about a happy ending or a tragic ending or anything like that. We learned a satisfying ending, okay? And that actually really helped me out in the real life of something satisfying, all right? The hero doesn't need to win at the end of the day. What it needs to be is satisfying. And so satisfying is the feeling of learning something to help you move forward. What did you learn? What can you take forward to the next day, right? So it's that hope that that character that you have followed throughout 2.5 hours learned something new from the beginning of the movie and moved forward. That's satisfying, okay? In our internal battles, we want to be a better person than we were yesterday, right? There are many great battles where we fight in ourselves, and some days we move forward, some days we have to realize, well, this is just one step back for maybe a giant leap forward later, or this is one piece of the puzzle for today. Like, that's what I got. Some days we have a new batch of armor that we need to put on. And then some days we get stabbed in the heart and we have to figure out how to heal all over again, right? So there are also days where we blow everything off, okay? So Netflix and a tub of ice cream. I mean, it happens, right? It's one of those things where, like, maybe that helps you feel completely satisfied. I mean, I know the sense of accomplishment of maybe you learned something on Netflix and like, oh, cool, that ice cream tub is now done. Like, I've conquered that. Or maybe you figured out your favorite flavors of ice cream because of it. So there are days that we do need a break, that we do need self-care. And self-care can involve doing absolutely nothing for a while. I know that there are days that my mind is exhausted and I need like a full shutdown before I can reboot again. But I also know that I personally can't stay in that shutdown mode for too long, or I don't feel satisfied. I'll feel like everything is starting to pile up and I'll have more work that I'll need to do later. So it's figuring out what makes you satisfied, which makes you feel like you are moving forward, you are learning something new to get you to that next moment, to that next battle, to that next victory. So I feel like there's more. I always feel like there's more. I mean, hell, I don't know, but I could maybe write a book about internal battlegrounds and using Wonder Woman kind of as a motif sort of thing. But I wanted to make sure I wasn't too long, that I had enough time to kind of open it up for discussion of what works for y'all. If there's anything that I was like, no, honey, that's not going to work for me, that is totally fine. Let's discuss. If you have any advice for anybody struggling with their own internal battlefield of what worked for you, let's talk about it. Go ahead and unmute all that glorious stuff.